Welcome to all you fire drill firefighters. And to those of you joining for the first time, welcome to the Fire Drill Fridays family, where we're building community and learning about the climate crisis and taking action to try to end it. And each of you can help our movement grow by sharing today's show so your friends and colleagues can join the movement. So please take a moment now and hit the share button. You know, the more people who understand the gravity of the potential climate catastrophe and are willing to act, the more chance we have to succeed in minimizing it. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to discuss the fossil fuel subsidies, the current state of the Build Back Better bill, and the massive oil spill here in Southern California. We're going to do things a little differently today and jump right in. We have an incredible guest joining us who's very, very busy right now, working to bring about the urgent action needed to address climate change. Congressman Ro Khanna is proud to serve as the representative of California's 17th district. As Silicon Valley's representative in Congress, Ro Khanna is a progressive capitalist who's led the way on tech policy and job creation, working across the aisle to pass multiple bills into law. He was named the Democrat most likely to succeed in having a bill signed by former President Trump, passing 5 bills into law before the Trump administration, or during the Trump administration. In response to the growing economic crisis, Ro led the way on the largest government investment in science and technology since the 1960s, the Endless Frontiers Act, which invests $250 billion in science and technology hubs across the United States. As chairman of the Oversight subcommittee on the environment, Ro has championed the environment while holding polluters accountable and calling for an end to fossil fuel subsidies and offshore drilling. During his time in Congress, Ro has worked to spread the wealth of high-paying digital jobs to areas of the country left behind in the digital revolution, partnering with Silicon Valley tech companies to establish job training programs in states like Iowa and South Carolina and Mississippi to rebuild the middle class. Ro has worked across the aisle while remaining committed to progressive principles and policies that will ensure a more competitive, prosperous economy. I'm so happy and grateful to have you with us, Congressman Khanna. Thank you so much.
Jay, that's the most generous introduction I think I've ever received. And it's a particular honor coming from you, someone who I have long admired as one of the nation's leading champions on the climate crisis and environmental justice, putting your convictions out there, and for many years, a leading voice against overseas wars and making sure that we are upholding human rights and not spending trillions in overseas wars. So you have really been such a champion for human rights, for environmental rights, and your program is widely watched, widely talked about in the halls of Congress. So I'm honored to be on.
Well, that's good news. That makes me very
It's
happy.
true.
Thank you, Ro. Thank you. You know, you've been a champion for bold action on climate change. Where does your drive and passion for tackling this issue come from?
Well, first, from science. I mean, I grew up believing that we ought to listen to science, and the science is pretty clear. If we don't act, we're going to leave a planet that is not as sustainable or inhabitable for my kids and for their kids. Second, I think partly from my own faith. I mean, I'm of Hindu faith, but one of the things of Hindu faith is that you honor your surroundings and you honor the planet, and you're a steward of the planet. And human beings are have to share and live in the planet with in harmony with other species and with other living entities. And so, for us to just cause destruction on the climate or the planet isn't consistent with my basic values.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you. And I'm sure you've been following what's happening with the massive spill from the broken pipeline connected to offshore drilling. About 5 miles off the coast of Orange County here in California. It's leaked 126,000 gallons of oil. How do we hold fossil fuel companies accountable for their damage to our communities and our environment?
Well, Jane, in this case, I am leading a letter and an investigation into what happened. We already sent a letter co-signed by other chairs of relevant subcommittees asking why there were violations of this company, why there was no oversight, what we were doing to prevent this in the future, and what we're doing to hold this company accountable. But there are two policy areas. One is we need to stop offshore drilling. Now, we need to do that in the federal bill, but the governor, as you know, has the ability to do that for some of the offshore drilling that the state gets to regulate. We should have a clear announcement that we're going to stop it. I mean, Californians don't want to see more oil spills on their coast. It's time to end the offshore drilling. And the second thing is we have to hold big oil accountable. I'm going to have a historic hearing in a couple months where the Exxon CEO, Chevron, BP, Shell, all are coming before my committee to answer for climate disinformation. It will be like the big tobacco hearings in '94. We're finally going to hold these big oil companies accountable.
So great. Thank you. There's You've been leading the charge to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies. Why is it critical to tackling the climate crisis? What impact will eliminating subsidies have on stopping the expansion of fossil fuels?
Well, Jane, our committee has led this. We had Greta Thunberg in and others to testify. Let me say very simply what's going on. Right now, if you want to drill an oil well, you actually get privileged treatment from our federal government. You get a tax incentive to do that, as opposed to if you want to make a solar plant or invest in alternative energy. It's absurd, but you get to depreciate all in 1 year any expense for an oil drill. Whereas if you're investing in manufacturing for solar or wind, you get 7 years depreciation. So it's clear, right? Important for people to understand this. Right now, our policy incentivizes, puts a hand on the scale to be so important. We need to ask them how many millions of dollars are they spending on climate disinformation, on lobbyists to kill climate legislation, and are they acting in contradiction to what they're telling their board of directors? Their board of directors have been activists, and they're telling them we have a sustainable policy, we support climate legislation, yet they're funneling millions of dollars to do the opposite. We're going to finally call them on that and demand some consistency.
They say that they don't get special tax treatments and that they follow the same tax provisions applied to all businesses. Is that true?
It's just false. It's false. If someone, if any of your viewers, listeners have time, look at the hearing we had with Greta Thunberg. I questioned the American Petroleum Institute. And I said, is it true that you get to depreciate all of your equipment in 1 year? He said, yes. I said, is it true that other industries have to wait 7 years to depreciate that? He said, yes. I said, isn't that special treatment? He said, yes. I said, are you agreeing that you shouldn't have this special treatment? He said, yes. So he agrees they shouldn't have this, but he knows that his lobbyists will make sure these repeals don't get in there. And that's why it's really up against the lobbyists. Everyone knows they get special treatments. That's beyond dispute.
Wow. And the fossil fuel companies claim that the subsidies help their workers. Is that true?
That's not true. It's largely going to their corporate profits. Their corporate profits have been high. If you want to have worker subsidies to train in new jobs or to pay them proper benefits, I'm all for that. I have nothing against those who worked in coal or oil. I understand they're hardworking Americans providing for their families. And many of them have done a lot to build America's economy. And we should respect the workers and their culture and not judge them. But we have to create new opportunities and possibilities for their kids. They know that. They know that a lot of coal has been automated. They know that the future of renewable energy is where a lot of the jobs and market is. And so let's invest and subsidize in fossil fuel heavy communities opportunities for new jobs. Let's build there first.
Yeah, and make sure that they're good paying union equivalent jobs, right?
Exactly, because they get $30, $35. But I think it's so important that we not come with a tone of moral condescension or judge these workers, because a lot of them are providing for their family, and they've done these jobs for generations, and their concern is that they want to be part of the middle class. So they're not to blame. It's these corporations, executives who haven't been transparent, and it's our government policy that hasn't invested in the new industries in this areas to give people an alternative choice and access to higher paying jobs.
Yeah. The House Oversight Committee has launched an investigation into climate crisis disinformation, as you said, and currently your 6 fossil fuel company executives have been asked to appear before the committee. Tell us more about this, and it's your committee and what you hope will change.
It's a big deal. It's never happened in Congress before that these
Really?
executives have come in and they're cooperating. So they plan to come in. They're already giving us documents. They're cooperating. We're finally going to have a chance to ask them in front of the American people, what have you done on climate disinformation in the past? Are you funding think tanks to put out propaganda? Are you engaged in funding shadow dark groups to kill climate legislation, to engage in climate denialism? What are you going to commit to under oath in terms of stopping doing that and living up to what your board has asked? If any of your viewers have questions or issues that we should bring up, let us know. It's going to be, like the big tobacco hearings, a big deal to have these executives finally having to answer to the American public.
When the hearing takes place, what do you think our viewers and constituents can do to support and engage with the investigation? Anything?
Well, one, to make your opinions heard on what should be asked about the lines of inquiry. There are a lot of great members on that committee, everyone from Cori Bush to AOC to Katie Porter to Jamie Raskin. So a lot of people are going to have a chance to ask some good questions. Two, to share those hearings in your networks and really try to get it to go viral online so that people are paying attention to what these executives are saying and that they will be held accountable for their testimony.
Excellent. Last week, House progressives stood firm against moderate pressure to pass only the half of the Biden agenda, that bipartisan bill, which is a lot smaller. Can you explain a bit about why it's important that we pass the full big Build Back Better Act, particularly a Build Back Better Act that eliminates fossil fuel subsidies?
Well, first, let's talk about climate change. I mean, the bipartisan bill is investing in the old economy. It's not doing anything for climate. If you're going to build traditional highways and roads and bridges and have nothing in there significantly for electric vehicles, no carbon standards, you're basically asking for more carbon in the atmosphere. So what we've said is, yes, we understand roads and bridges have to be built, but they have to be built in a 21st century way. And you need to complement that with the clean energy standard that incentivizes all of the infrastructure, all of utilities to be 100% clean in a decade, that puts mandates on some of the utilities to hit those targets, that we need to end the fossil fuel subsidies. So what the bills together do is ensure sustainable, environmentally conscious development in our country. And that's why we've insisted that they have to pass together. And the president agrees with us.
Are you hopeful?
It's a must do, Jane. We can't not pass this. This is the president's agenda. This is what we campaigned on. If we don't pass it, we're in a world of hurt with voters who we've let down. So it's time for the president, I think, to make it clear. He won the election. He beat Trump. It's time to compromise. He wants both bills. If he has a good faith compromise, that's fine. But time to get on board. 48 senators are on board. The House is on board. The president wants this. We need the others to get on board.
And lastly, my final question, how can the Fire Drill Fridays community support you and the other climate champions on the Hill?
Well, your community is so influential, and I assume some of you are in Arizona, and even those who are not probably have friends in Arizona. But there's one senator who hasn't told us what she wants, hasn't been transparent about how much she wants on the reconciliation. She's saying she doesn't want to raise taxes on anyone. I tell people all the taxes are going to be paid by my district, and people like Jane, I mean, Californians will pay the taxes. It's a lot of the wealth is here, and it'll help the Midwest and the South. Why are you opposed to taxing my district? Why are you opposed to taxing the Silicon Valley companies and the billionaires? They're happy to pay tax so that everyone in this country can get free school and childcare, and seniors can get dental and vision, and so we can actually deal with the climate crisis. Ask Kirsten Sinema why she ran for Congress, why she ran for the Senate, what her plan is. Is she really going to stand in the way of the president's agenda, of the Democratic Party's agenda, of what the American people want? It's time that she listened to people around this country and in her state.
So you think even though we're not Arizonans, that getting in touch with her, letting her office know, if not her directly, that that's still effective?
It is. And I'm sure through your network, you have Arizonans as friends as well. But I think all popular mobilization is effective at this point.
Thank you, Congressman Ro Khanna. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Stay
you.
strong, stay safe.
Thank you, Jane.
I'm sorry that the congressman had to run so soon and couldn't take audience questions, but it was great to hear from him, and it really is what gives me hope. Climate champions like Ro Khanna, who's in there trying to push the government to appropriately address the climate crisis. By the way, here's another thing that gives me hope. Yesterday, over 330 US scientists sent a letter to President Biden urging him to stop all new fossil fuel projects and declare a climate emergency. That's really heavy duty. That's good. And Dr. Sandra Steingraber, who has been on Fire Drill Fridays a number of times and is a wonderful friend, she was majorly behind that effort to get the scientists to write that letter. So we're very proud of her, Sandra Steingraber. You know, it's really amazing how much things have changed since even last year. I know I watch the news a lot. I don't know if you do, but so many of the elected Democrats on television, the talking heads, if you will, they talk about climate change when they list their top priorities. You know, that's relatively new. And you folks are part of the reason why. You have let your elected officials know that that's what you want them to do. So pat yourselves on the back. Sadly, the proof that the oil and gas industries are dangerous, irresponsible, and long out of date, the proof is all around us. As we mentioned earlier last week, this huge crude oil spill from a broken pipeline off the coast of Orange County in California has happened, and it's endangering incredibly fragile and gorgeous wildlife refuges and wetlands, and it could take decades to recover. It's really bad. And on Wednesday, oil spewed from Marathon's Galveston Bay refinery in Texas. That happened. And you know, it's in this moment of crises, this is when it's crucial that our leaders, including California Governor Gavin Newsom and President Biden, respond by halting the expansion of fossil fuels. And as Ro Khanna mentioned, through the budget reconciliation process that's happening right now, we can stop Congress from continuing to spend billions of our tax dollars subsidizing the very industry responsible for fueling the climate crisis. In the past few weeks, we've had members of Congress publicly support and advocate for the elimination of fossil fuel subsidies. You know, as we see the momentum for climate action, we've also seen fossil fuel front groups and lobbyists like the American Petroleum Industry Institute spend millions and millions of dollars on ads supporting these handouts that line the pockets of fossil fuel CEOs. We have to let our congressional leaders know that they mustn't cave to the pressures of fossil fuel lobbyists and instead stand up for the people and communities across the country by eliminating these subsidies once and for all. And as we're coming to the end of the hottest summer on record, the West is still plagued with raging fires. The Gulf and East Coasts are still processing the damage from Hurricane Ida's strong winds and subsequent flooding, and climate chaos is unfolding all around us. If Congress fails to eliminate fossil fuel subsidies from the Build Back Better Act, they're negotiating away a safe climate future. There is still hope, folks. There is. The Senate can still make sure that the elimination of fossil fuel subsidies is included in the final reconciliation package. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Finance Committee Chairman Senator Wyden are champions on this issue and are working together to craft legislation that will address the climate crisis and Congress's financial support of the oil and gas industry. We must push our senators to get this done. Y'all know the drill, right? To make change, we have to take action. So I ask you to go to firedrillfridays.com/take action and send a message to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Ron Wyden. He's chair of the Senate Finance Committee today, and let them know it's time to end fossil fuel subsidies once and for all. And get a hold of Cinema there, that woman. She's a very complicated and not an uninteresting woman in Arizona who's blocking our Build Back Better Act, and we don't know why. So especially if you come from Arizona, call her. And even if you're not from Arizona, call her office. Try to shut down her phone lines with so many calls that she'll know that there's so much public pressure out there for her to step up to the plate and support this critical act. And by the way, also, please take some time on Monday for Indigenous Peoples Day. Follow our social media to learn more ways to be an ally to Indigenous people and support their work across the nation. We have to keep standing together, strong, and demanding our leaders take the actions needed to protect our world. And take care of yourselves and each other. I'll see you next time.